Returning to our top story now, and for more on Israel's expanding military operation in Gaza, let's bring in Afzal Ashraf. He's an international security specialist at Loughborough University, and he joins us now from London. Really good to have you back with us, Ashraf. Firstly, what do you make of what Israel is doing in Rafah in southern Gaza right now? We know world leaders, including the US President Joe Biden, has cautioned Benjamin Netanyahu not to push ahead with a ground offensive in Gaza's southernmost city. But it does appear that Israeli forces are doing that just now, but just in a bit-by-bit approach. So what's your assessment of what's happening there right now?
Well, I think you've described what's happening there. Israel is continuing the offensive into Rafah. And actually, in the last day or so, it's obvious that they are also having to continue the work that they had declared that they'd done in the north and the central parts of Gaza, because they had assumed they'd cleared Hamas, but there is a lot of fighting going on. The problem, of course, is apart from Rafah now, the world is almost blinded to what's happening in the rest of the Gazan region. But reports are filtering out that Hamas is apparently still there, and Israel is asking for the civilians to evacuate from the north. The problem in Rafah, of course, is the density of population. And one of the problems we as analysts and you in the media have is trying to understand the difference between the claims and the rhetoric and the reality. Of course, Israel has claimed throughout this operation that it is trying to eliminate Hamas. But it is doing so in some instances with 1,000 to 1 casualty ratio. So when we look at one of the refugee camps it attacked, it managed to kill one of the Hamas senior officials, but according to reports in the UK papers, over 1,000 people were either killed or harmed in that incident. So what I think is happening in Rafah is that the right-wing elements of the Israeli government want to take this opportunity, which they think is a limited window of opportunity, to cause as much destruction, to reduce the capability of the population, both in terms of numbers and in terms of ability, so that once this a war is brought to a halt, and it looks like it might be the international community will put pressure on the United States and other countries to stop supporting Israel. What they want to be is in the next few days to be in a position where the population has been degraded both physically, morally, and in health and other capability terms, so that they will be much more compliant as far as the Israelis are concerned to an Israeli-dominated solution. And I think that's what they are moving forward towards. And reports have come out in the last hour or so of carpet bombing in parts of Gaza. And so there is absolutely no evidence that Israel is doing anything to mitigate the suffering of the people, although Israel claims it has evacuated 300,000 people and so on.
That's right. And again, as you say, Israel has made those claims of those evacuations. They've said that those 300,000 people have currently moved to a so-called humanitarian zone a bit north of Rafah in Al-Mawasi. But then we have the UN saying, UNRWA saying, that there really is no safe place in Gaza at all for those in Rafah to evacuate to. We know that 1.4 million people who are in Rafah, most of them are displaced from elsewhere in the enclave. So there really isn't anywhere safe for them to evacuate to, is there?
Absolutely. The word humanitarian corridor or humanitarian safe space is almost a joke if it wasn't so serious. And as you've said, the UN have said that the humanitarian situation there is dire, and it's getting worse the more people evacuate. The point, of course, is that Israel wants to be able to claim that it's done things. So it's claimed that it's evacuated or is evacuating a substantial number from Rafah. The interesting thing from our perspective is that those claims are not being bought as they would have been as fig leaves for Israeli policy by the US and the UK. And in the last hour or so, the foreign minister, Lord Cameron in the UK, has said that as far as the government here is concerned in the UK, that the Israelis have not provided sufficient assurances that civilians are being taken care of and everything reasonable is being done to avoid mass civilian casualties. So that's despite the claims of having evacuated 300,000 people. So I think all of this is pointing to a reality on the ground, and that is a combination of domestic pressure and international pressure, both in Israel and in the United States, and of course in European countries and worldwide, where the populations are saying our patience is running out. And so there's a great deal of pressure on the Israeli government to do the job a lot quicker than they would have liked to. At the beginning of the year, you may recall that Prime Minister Netanyahu was talking about this taking till the end of the year. I think the penny's dropped. And what that sadly means is that the urgency is going to accelerate even more horror and suffering for the innocent civilians. Now, to be fair and to be balanced, Lord Cameron has said that really the blame falls on Hamas for having rejected deals. Well, according to Hamas and according to other sources, Hamas did accept a Qatar Egyptian deal, which then was rejected by Israel. The point is, whether it's Israel, whether it's Hamas, the people paying the price for this are the most innocent, the most vulnerable, primarily children, primarily women, and also some brave, selfless volunteers, hundreds of them, working for humanitarian organizations, your own journalists, Algeria's journalists, ordinary citizens who are sacrificing their lives, their comfort to get this story out. So the suffering of innocence versus the insensitivity of world leaders or leaders in power in Palestine and elsewhere is a huge contrast.
Okay, Dr. Afzal Ashraf, we will have to leave it there, but it was really good to get your thoughts. Thanks again for joining us.
It's a pleasure.